It's Keyanna Hatcher, and I'm so excited to spend time with you all this morning. I am currently in Los Angeles, right where I grew up, in the same house that I grew up in. So I'm excited to bring this experience also to my family and share it with them. I also appreciate the invitation to speak and share with you all about my journey to college that brought me to this place here today, and the work of Go Public Schools, which I have come to know, and their vision of every child receiving a quality education to fully participate and succeed in life. Um, and that's exactly what I do. So I'm excited for the partnership that we have started to develop and will continue to work on throughout the years. Today, I'm going to be talking about exploring the bridge from younger schools like elementary, middle, and high school all the way up into college, because that's what I personally did for myself, but also what I do professionally with my students in West Contra, Costa, and Oakland Unified School Districts. It's my life. I literally live and breathe college all day long. I go to sleep thinking about how can I better prepare students for life after high school and going into a college or career that's best fit for them. So today I am going to share my screen. There are a couple of personal pictures and anecdotes that I'll be sharing with you all today. We are in a webinar format, and so I don't think that I will see the questions, but I will keep my eye on the chat as well if questions do pop up for me. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So as Natalie said, I am the Associate Director of UC Berkeley TRIO programs for the Educational Talent Search. We're a federally funded program. And outside of that, I also call myself a champion of students and families. And so I get really excited to work with families, work with students, and just really do the work. I do want to do some myth busting today and give you all some insight into who is speaking with you all today. I think a lot of times when people hear the school that I've attended or positions that I hold, like being president or being associate director, people get this idea in their mind of who I am or what I might have done or places that I've been, but I'm here to tell you that I might not be any of that or confirm what you might think. I am a Black woman. I identify as a Black woman who grew up in Inglewood, California. And I grew up in an all Black and brown neighborhood. And so that's really important for me to mention and highlight, because it also speaks to my love for speaking Spanish and learning more about Spanish culture. I identify as low income first generation and can proudly say that has not always been the case. And so I like to build that into my students as well. If they are low income first generation, it is something for us to be proud of. I'm a product of Sharon and James, my parents, who both spent the majority of my life in jail. So that meant that I was raised by a single grandmother who did a great job with me and my siblings. I grew up in my local public schools. My entire life, I went to every school that I was assigned to, walked to school most of the time, a couple of miles each day. I graduated from one of the lowest performing high schools in Los Angeles, and at the time didn't always do my best or have access to the best resources or most advanced classes or capable teachers. And yet I still graduated at the top of my class. And went on to the #1 public university in the world. And now I get to have so much influence as the associate director and president of TRIO programs in Northern California. Like Natalie mentioned, I'm also a dancer, a baker. I'm also an amazing aunt. Like, I think I'm the #1 aunt in the world. And I consider myself a planner and life of the party. So I'm excited for you all to get to know me throughout this presentation a little more as well, and my program and the work that we get to do. I think it's a great theme of the fair to talk about exploring the bridge to college, because I would not have been able to accomplish any of what I have without the support and assistance and encouragement of my family and mentors that have gotten me to where I am today. And so I want you all to think about a bridge. What do you think about and what do you see when we think of the word bridge? So in preparation for today, I was thinking like exploring the bridge to college, and the researcher in me has to really think about like, what is the purpose of a bridge? And I looked it up. And one of the things that was shared Oh, apologies. The purpose of a bridge is to allow people or cargo easy passage over an obstacle by providing a route that would otherwise be uneven or impossible. And so for me, this makes me think about this little bridge, or to me in my young mind, was a little bridge in, sorry for this bridge in Birmingham, in Edgewater, Alabama, and it sat on the side of my great grandfather's house. Edgewater is a very small backwoods city in Birmingham with like a secret entrance. Instead of city blocks, they don't call them like, oh, we're on this block. It's only 4 rows of streets in this little city. This is where my family grew up. And this is where I have my earliest childhood memories of playing in the streets, woods, and in the front yard. I also remember catching the school bus to elementary school where they had real forks, not sporks like in California schools, but like real forks and real breakfast that they served every morning. But in my young mind, this little bridge right here was humongous. It seemed like it took minutes to cross it. And I used to be so scared that I was either going to fall on the side of it or an alligator would like pop up and bite me. But looking at this picture that I had one of my cousins who still live in this neighborhood go and take for me for today, it literally takes me seconds now to cross this bridge. And I realized that there is not much to be afraid of, although I still think that there's alligators lurking around somewhere in there. But for me, this bridge represents my limited amount of education and information about college, from being prepared, exposed, and aware of the process. It represents the little knowledge my family knew about college because I would be the first to attend and graduate. It represents the focus on home. It represents my grandmother's desire and expectation for me to be great, but her basic level of knowledge on what that actually meant for me. She didn't get to go to college. She walked miles and miles to go to school. And for her, home took precedent over school. So that meant from like cooking and cleaning, like that was our focus and priority at our house. She held the standard that we would do well academically, but there was not much talk about what happened after high school or what was expected of me after high school. And I don't think it was any fault of hers because we all have our limitations, and I honor her drive and push for me to do well in every area of my life, regardless of what she knew. But there was also not much talk about college in my elementary schools either. We just focused on what was happening in that grade. And there was like this occasional question of what did I want to be when I grew up? But I never knew how I would actually get there. My answer to the question was always, I remember how I used to always say I wanted to be a pediatrician, but I don't even know where that answer came from. And I think maybe it might've been ingrained in my mind of like, that becoming a doctor was the ultimate measure of success. Or maybe came from TV or because someone told me that it would be a great idea for me to become a doctor. But I don't like blood. I don't like doctors. I don't like the dentist. Like I don't like anything about being a doctor. And I always knew that I wanted to be a teacher. Always loved education. Always loved helping people. So much like the bridge, my mind was small, limited in knowledge and information. This little bridge now means so much to me because it was my foundation for who I will become. And the more I think about bridges and their purposes, I think about those that provided me opportunities to overcome challenges and obstacles that I faced throughout my life. I was constantly surrounded by Black women teachers and although they did not necessarily teach me about college, they held me accountable to what they saw in me. In elementary school, I had Miss Walton, who recognized the leader in me and allowed me to help other students with their homework. I had Miss Terrio, who reminded me of how smart I was and how I felt special when she recommended me for the GATE program. Miss Wilson, who encouraged me to hang out with a different group of friends when she noticed me hanging out with like the bad crowd, and also told me to walk straight and put on lotion when I forgot, when I walked out the house and forgot to put some on. She also invited me to her house and welcomed me into her family. She taught me sportsmanship because she used to beat us in handball unapologetically. She's like the best handball teacher in the world. My favorite elementary school memory is our school Olympics. And we literally trained like we were in the Olympics. Our PE class turned into training sessions, and Miss Wilson made sure that we were the best in the classroom and on the field. but they all held me accountable when I misbehaved in class and I had to write standards, stand on the red line at recess and at lunch, or do campus clinics, because I wasn't the perfect student, but that didn't mean that I didn't deserve the encouragement or support. I just had to be reminded of consequences of my talkative nature. And in middle school, I still talked a lot. I still talk a lot to this day. And I knew I was smart, but didn't have the resources to build my skills or knowledge. I remember wanting to be great at science experiments. Like, I always wanted to be great at science experiments, but I didn't have the resources to make the fancy boards with the colorful stickers. And I knew what the experiment was, but I didn't know how to present an experiment. And instead of having the Mrs. Wilsons and Terriels and Waltons in my life, I was met with Miss Trish, another Black woman teacher, but she was different than the ones I had previously. Miss Trish was a math teacher, and we all frowned when we had her as our math teacher in 8th grade. But it was inevitable because she was the only math teacher for our group of kids that were labeled as like honors or AP kids. She didn't recognize me as one of those students, though. She had the opportunity to recommend students for a middle school bridge program at our local community college. And unfortunately, I was not one of the students on her list. I remember going to like my other teachers, like my honors language arts teacher, or the Miss Hughes that people know from the movie The Wood. One fact, I was in that movie, and another fact, Miss Hughes was my real teacher. And I remember going to them and having to advocate for myself, saying like, I deserve to be in this program. Miss Trish never recommended me, but they did. That's when I recognized a fighter in me, and there was something that I knew I needed to do to be in that program. I was accepted into the program. I was assigned a research project in a college or university, and I conducted my research on Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia. And again, I don't know where these ideas came from, and maybe I saw it on TV or someone in the program, but it was my first introduction to research, college exploration, and setting a goal for my future. I began to tell my family and friends that Spelman is where I was going to college. It stuck with me, and I had my eyes set on going to college from then on. I'm grateful for the bridge program because it meant that my little bridge was getting longer. In high school, I started following after my brother, which sometimes got me in trouble. And in the same way of being the academically sound student that people had come to know. I can't blame it all on him though, but he did have a big influence on my life. At the same time, in the back of my mind was always Spelman. I was placed on the honors and AP track, and I struggled with wanting to be popular and cool and being like the nerd smart kid. I was a cheerleader on the volleyball team, ran track, all because I was naturally good at these things and sincerely enjoyed sports. I was also in student leadership, the Black Student Union, and did community service, was active in church, and had jobs. No one told me to do any of this. I was just the kid that wanted to try and do it all. Some things came natural and some things didn't. Like playing in the band, it was not for me. I knew nothing about, and I still don't know anything about music or notes or instruments or anything. I definitely quit the band after 1 hour, but I did try. And it wasn't until I met Miss Reeves that I recognized that all of this mattered and served a purpose for my future. Miss Reeves reminded me of the other women who believed in me in my younger years. She taught my brother and did home visits when he wasn't doing well. So I dropped AP US history to take her regular history class because to me, she was the better teacher. She introduced me to books like Night by Elie Wiesel and had us study the Holocaust, which sincerely blew my mind. She gave us assignments that awakened the creative researchers in us, and she gave us a space to be ourselves in the classroom. She let our minds wander and gave us the liberty to think on our own without a right or wrong answer. She introduced me to the SHAPE program and connected me with my lifelong mentors and advisors who were students at UCLA. I participated in tutoring and Saturday workshops and spent so much time on campus that it became one of my dream schools. I wanted to be like my mentors and tutors and wanted to give back to others in the same way that they were doing for me. I used my acquired knowledge from Ms. Reeves in the SHAPE program to teach others about college, and I became a college peer counselor. I spent time studying application processes and different types of colleges, and not just for myself, but for other people. Ms. Reeves ended her teaching assignment by saying that I should apply to Berkeley, although I had my eyes set on UCLA and Spelman. I had no idea what Berkeley was, what it was, or how to get there, nothing. But because Ms. Reeves said it, I did it. Ms. Reeves changed my life because I applied, got in, and decided to go there, although I had gotten into my top choices. I didn't know that any other bridges existed or was made aware of any, especially growing up in Inglewood. Upon arriving to Berkeley, I saw that red bridge in the distance. And I said, oh, that's the Full House Bridge. And I still call it the Full House Bridge to this day because what's the real name? I think it's the Golden Gate Bridge, but it's the red bridge to me. But UC Berkeley was the best decision that I made. And I do have a couple of pictures I'm sorry, not thank you. But this is me in high school. And then there is that was junior high school, and now we're at UC Berkeley, which was the best decision that I had made. And I often tell Ms. Reeves that she saved my life, and I actually think that Ms. Reeves is here today on the call. So thank you for continuing to support me in my journey. But she saved my life and continues to do so. I had the time of my life in so many different ways. I walked onto campus with big eyes and still wanted to give back to kids and joined a mentoring program ran by Casey. And at the time, her last name was Hatcher, but now she's Casey Robinson, who is actually responsible for me being here today. I went to a Black graduation at the end of my freshman year, and that's what kept me focused on graduating, because I knew that one day I wanted my family to experience the joy that I saw in other families at the graduation when their kid crossed the stage. I did recruitment presentations on behalf of the university, going back into low-income schools, encouraging students to apply. I participated in protests against my grandmother's advice. I fought admission officers and even the chancellor about the percentage of students who were being admitted to Berkeley that were students of color. Like, I'm in the offices, I'm in meetings with university officials advocating for more students of color to be admitted to Berkeley, because that's what I wanted to see people come after me. But I always felt like what I had in teachers and mentors was so special, and I wanted to be that for others, and did that throughout my time as a student. And now that's what I do. And I'm that for other students, right? That's what I do. I'm a bridge. I bridge the gap for students of color accessing college, especially top tier universities. I tell my students all the time, if you with me, we shooting our shots at the top schools, and we're shooting for the best, whether you want to be a rapper or a heart surgeon, a teacher, a lawyer, we are always going to do our best. I assist, support, and champion students getting from one place to another in the smoothest, easiest way possible. I do not believe that just because I struggled, that my students or younger cousins, nieces, nephews, or anyone else connected to me have to endure the same type of obstacles. I believe that because I went through it first, it means that I've paved the way and cleared the path for everyone else coming behind me. And it's hard being the first, because that means like you're gonna get scraped up, beat up, but I also learned. I hear it all the time, people say like, oh, I wore Payless shoes, or I didn't have the best, of my kids are gonna have to wear Payless, or we're gonna shop at these lower, and not that I wear, and probably still would if they didn't go out of business, Payless shoes, but why? But why do kids have to endure the same struggle that we did? Struggle does build character. I do agree with that. But struggles come in different forms. And right now, our students are struggling with things that I never experienced or thought of, like navigating their education through a pandemic and dealing with the age of social media. And I'm so excited that the education fair will continue to like talk about the age of social media and the impact on education, because I think it weighs a lot in education. But my personal bridges and Mrs. Walton, Ms. Terrio, Ms. Wilson, and Ms. Reeves pushed me along my journey in a very subtle ways that they will never know. This is what I attempt to do with my students: see in them what they can't see yet. They serve as models for the way I engage with students. I have taken little pieces of all these people that have been my personal bridges or have paved ways for me, and I incorporate that into how I champion students. The bridge to college starts before high school. It starts in the small affirmations and actions from adults in the lives of kids that help them to see their own beauty, light, intelligence, and potential. So I think even if we're parents or if we're staff members, principals, all these people, I want us to think about like what are the small things that we can do in the lives of students that we have in our circles, in our spaces, to begin to affirm who they are even at a young age, because it helps to build their confidence and their character as they continue to go on throughout their educational journey. And this takes me to Rita Pearson quote, who says, "Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best they can possibly be." It's my mantra for my life and the work that I get to do with students. It's the work that I get to do and wake up every morning. Like, I don't drag myself out of bed or get super sad or weighed down like, oh, I have to go to work, but I get to go to work. I get to have influence. I get to be part of their lives. I get to go to football and volleyball and basketball games to cheer them on. I get to evaluate transcripts and find holes and areas of growth. I get to advocate for them with principals and teachers. I get to connect with parents and students. I get to stay up late writing letters of recommendations and editing personal statements. And I get to have difficult conversations with students. See, what I've come to know from the women and teachers and mentors before me is that the whole person matters. And no matter what we do, even as I work with my other staff member, like the whole person matters. And I can't separate home and school, right? Like, because home impacts what's happening at school. So I bring peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and cereal for them to eat in the morning, because some of my students don't have breakfast to eat at home, and that impacts focus in the classroom. So I bring it, and we eat cereal and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches together. I told you earlier, like, this is what helped to shape my life. Having teachers who kept lotion in their drawers, who picked me up and dropped me off to make sure I was at school, ate dinner with my family, and they pushed and asked questions, and not to be nosy, but to ensure that I was present, safe, and taken care of all the way around. They never mentioned how tired they may have been, gas money or food or anything. They just did it, and I felt the sincerity and love. I never put it all together until I was preparing for this today, but they're my bridges. And this is how I train my staff and other professionals. And this is how I talk to parents. And this is how I talk to students about how do we get from one place to the next. And it's really looking for bridges, looking for mentors and people and places that have created paths and smoothed the way for us to make it easier. And as I continue to reflect on my own journey and think about the work that I do with students, there's a few things that come to mind. Every kid in the home is different. And it's important for us to acknowledge that everyone, like every kid, I have siblings in my program, and one sibling is one way and one is another way. And that's exactly how me and my brother grew up, in the same house with the same background, and we have very different outlooks and outcomes of our situations. We both were dominant in sports. He played football and basketball, and I played volleyball and was a dancer, but we were super competitive. Like, to me, I can probably still beat him running or racing, in the streets. But there was a difference in that I loved school and he didn't. But people constantly compared us against each other for how quickly we finished math problems or how we looked up words in a dictionary. I was very quick with academics, whereas he was way more quick with sports and technology and things. And so I think that we have to err on the side of caution when we begin to compare kids. I also have a sister I have 7 siblings. Like, I have 6 brothers and 1 sister, and it's a lot of us, and we're all different. And I was the only one that graduated from a traditional high school and went off to college. But I think that my sister is super vocal, had someone said like, oh, you should go and be on the debate team, she might have had a different outcome. Not comparing us, but seeing in her what her strength is and speaking into that. And as I get older, I recognize that me and my siblings are all different, but they're all strong in certain areas where I might be weak. My sister talks a lot. I talk a lot, but she shares more of her opinions and thoughts where I'm doing more professionally. But I want us to err on the side of caution when we think of comparing students and comparing siblings, because my brother is an amazing father and football coach. He's on his way to get his GED. And I just want to appreciate his own journey, because every kid has their own journey. Every kid has their own match. What works for one might not work for another. And so I think that that's really, really important. Another thing is that college is a time for self-exploration and expression and identification. I loved everything about Berkeley. Like Natalie said, I met my best friends. We've traveled to Africa together and Mexico. Like, we've done life together. One is getting married this year and I'm in her wedding. And so Berkeley has brought me the academics, but it's also brought me such rich life experiences. But I think that like one of the things is my family, when I told them I was going to major in African American studies, they were like, how are you going to go to the number one school and not become a doctor or not become a lawyer? And so I was embarrassed to say, oh, I'm a history major, I'm an African American studies major, because it didn't level up to what their thought or expectation was for me going to such a great school. And so I tried to be a psychology major. And then I was like, oh, that's not going to work. So then I went to molecular and cell biology, and that didn't work either. And I was not getting the grades that I was used to. It didn't represent the student that I was, until I took an African American studies class, and it was a research on families. I loved it. And I went to class every day. I was getting A's in these classes, and it just help shape my perspective on, like not having a certain expectation just because a kid goes to a certain school, or we think that they might be great at something. So we push our own thoughts and expectations without allowing the freedom to explore. And so I really think that college is really about learning who you are and what you want to do, in a way that's like super unique to a person. And I think that my own challenges became when I decided to take on Professor Eula Taylor's classes. And this lady is notorious for giving 7 books in a semester, and midterms, like, she was hard, but I did it and I took it on. And the last thing I would say is to ask questions. I think a lot of times our initial question for kids is, what do you want to be? And I start switching it up and asking my students, who do they want to be? And how do you want that to show up in your life? So what's the who and the how? I had a student, Nyla Williams, one of my former students. She didn't know what she wanted to do, but she knew how, and she knows how she wants to show up in the world. So it leaves so much room for exploration and fun, and it opens the possibilities for different careers and colleges, and it helps to hold them to a standard of behavior. Because I think that one of the biggest things about talking about college is like, let's get students to college, but now my focus is how are we going to graduate students from college. So it's one thing to prepare them to get in, it's another thing to have them graduate from college, and that is character, right? And so I think that I shift the focus from college preparation to character preparation, and that's super big. And so we talk about accountability, we talk about integrity, we talk about responsibility, we talk about balance, how to have fun, and how to, work hard, play hard type of situation. But I think it's really important for us to start to shift conversations to ensure that we are instilling in our students and our families and our kids the character and the qualities that's going to help them graduate from college. And that's when they get to really enjoy life, because I'm enjoying life right now, So I really think that that's like super big. And so I encourage you all to ask questions that's supportive and allows for kids to think about how they want to show up in their own lives without the pressure to be something that just makes money or because it sounds good. Because I know that my character and personality has gotten me places that the name Berkeley has not. So before people know about Berkeley, they know me, they know my personality, and that's what I focus on with students. The bridge that I knew, that little bridge that you all saw in Alabama, which is so, so special to me, in Edgewater, was like the platform that scared me to death, but that like catapulted me to who I am right now. I never imagined that I would end up here, but I'm so grateful for each bridge that has helped me cross over challenges and circumstances and situations. And I continue to dream and to be challenged. I'm a fighter and I continue to blaze trails for all the kids that I work for, all the organizations that I represent. And I hope to continue to build bridges for families like you all and for organizations like the Ed Fair, to make the process easier, to make the process smoother. And so I serve as a resource. So if you all have questions, or if you want to know more, or if you want your students to be part of organizations or programs that might not even, be TRIO, but I am a resource that can help to partner kids with programs that are beneficial for them to get to places that they want to go. And so I know that the benefits are always going to outweigh challenges, and that's what I always tell students. And I hope to continue to do this work for the rest of my life, because this is what I'm passionate about and this is what I love to do. And so I thank you all for the time today. And if you all have questions, I believe there's time for some questions. And I also put my email up. I don't know if you all can fully see it, but it's kiannah@berkeley.edu. So if you all have, I don't know, Natalie, if there's time for questions, but I'm definitely open if there are any.
We have time for maybe just one. Also, Keyanna's going to join us on our African-American student panel later this week. And she has 2 members of her team joining us for the session right after this one, who also work in the same program that she's currently in. So if you have one specifics about that program, you can hop on for our next session as well. But if someone has a question, you can hop into the Q&A and drop it in there. Andrea Martinez asked if we can send out requirements for the program. Absolutely, we can. We have your email addresses from the attendance form, and to everyone who came today, we'll go ahead and send them out. Keyanna's gonna give them to me, and then I will give them to you. They are anchored in a certain number of schools within our district, but also have students who are not in those schools welcome into programming. So I learned about it recently and I'm very excited about it. So we'll make sure we push out all that information to folks as we go along. Great question.
What age should students join these programs? Can I answer that question?
Sure can.
Okay. As soon as possible. Like I said, I think that the bridge to college starts before high school. It starts before middle school. If I had the opportunity, I would have an elementary school program, because I think that elementary school is such a rich age. And if we know anything about students of color, they say, especially for Black boys in particular, by the 3rd grade, we might have lost interest for some kids starting in the 3rd grade. And so we can get the kids sooner rather than later. So there's so many like tutoring programs and mentorship programs that kids can be a part of in elementary school. I shouldn't say it like this, but I'm going to say it because I like to be authentic. I can't stand when parents tell me that, oh, it's too early and kids are in 9th and 10th grade. I have 7th graders in my program. I have 6th graders in my program, right? And so the earlier, the better. So if your kid is in 6th grade, they can sign up for my program. Elementary school, even better, but I think the earlier, the better, to really start having the conversations in the home and to start building the knowledge and character at the earliest age possible. My program in particular starts at 6th grade. Please don't wait until high school.
That is perfect advice for us to end on. I think it's the biggest take home is always earlier better.